On today's show, episode number 42 of the Real Recovery podcast, we are joined by Erin Kelling. Erin shares her powerful journey from the depths of addiction, homelessness, and abuse to a life of purpose and leadership in recovery. We discuss the challenges of breaking free from a destructive lifestyle, the impact of a strong recovery community, and Erin's work as a house manager at Arbor House Portland. Tune in for an inspiring conversation about resilience, transformation, and the power of giving back.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host. On this journey of healing and transformation, together with my co-host Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-8569. That number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
Of recovery, real recovery.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm rolling.
Hey, this is Julie from the Real Recovery Podcast.
And this is Peter.
And today we have Erin from our home group. I'm so excited. Erin also works in recovery and brings a crew pretty regularly now to the Friday meeting. I love it.
Yeah.
When I started, I was the token girl. So I love it. I really love it. And we're at Studio Edge, Peter's house.
Yeah, welcome. I love the way that our meeting keeps growing and changing, and it's becoming more diverse in
More
different
open.
ways and more open. And that's people like you bringing people in. So I think it's fantastic.
I love the enthusiasm. It's great. I don't even want to talk on Fridays, seriously. Like when you were looking at me the other day, I was like, please don't call on me. Please don't call on me. Because I really enjoy listening and getting the new people's perspective, especially when they're so excited. I've heard a lot of the other people, I'm sure they've heard me.
It's exciting to bring so many women from the house to the meeting, especially hearing how safe they feel there. That particular meeting for me feels so safe. Yeah.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have any trust in this whole entire
Right.
world if it wasn't for that meeting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's what brought me out of my shell too, is where I was more conservative. And if you're not comfortable and you don't feel you can be, for me, not being comfortable and being able to be fully honest about myself was a block, was a barrier. And so finding a meeting where I felt I could be fully open, honest, was just a game changer for me. And it's partly why I have over 7 years now. Whoa, I'm going on 8 years. Woohoo!
Yeah. You're going on 8?
Next July will be 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting my 8 in February.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I
Right.
know. We're on the same dance there.
Yeah. Izzy's also going to
Don't
be an
wanna-
8-year-old.
put the chips down. But no, just kidding.
Yes, we have
Okay,
a long...
you got us beat.
Nah, I wasn't going to do
No,
it.
I
I have to tell you, this week, tomorrow, like I do feel really comfortable in our meeting. And Alcoholics Anonymous has been a safe place for me, and that meeting in particular. But I'm chairing a CMA meeting for the very first time tomorrow, and I'm scared shitless.
CMA kept me clean during the pandemic, actually. So they had a CMA meeting that was one of the only meetings that was up and running during the pandemic on Monday nights when 4D was still 4D. And that was like the only meeting that we could get to. And I am a meth addict. That's my drug of choice. And yeah, I know. I always, whenever I hear you, I'm like, we have so much in common.
And
You
I-
only knew,
and I
girl.
didn't- And guess what? I didn't share about it for probably the first 21 years.
Wow.
And I'd say using or whatever. I never really talked about intravenous drug usage either. Because I was in AA and I was respectful Two, there wasn't even CMA when I came into AA.
Yeah.
It's not something that was there that long ago. And I was always respectful. And then I think because I'm so uncomfortable with people in active addiction, that it wasn't easy for me as well.
Yeah.
So let's get to you, not about me. I'm excited to hear your whole story because I know
Yeah.
we do have a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah. I was listening to your story, one of the first podcasts. I went back to that and I heard yours, and it brought me some comfort because I was like, wow, we have a lot in common. And yeah, so it's always strange sharing my story from the whole thing, because I was just telling Peter, I very rarely actually have the platform to do it because I feel like my story is so long. But I always try to think about where it started for me. And like part of my story is like a lot of people share like a really rough childhood, but for me, that really wasn't the case. I had really loving parents. My dad was a pastor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my mom is a social worker. She worked for CPS for my entire childhood.
Which is Child Protective Services.
Child Protective Services,
Wow.
which is quite ironic because I had two really great parents. And saying that, I just like to always preface like, this disease does not care.
Right.
It doesn't care if you're loved as a child.
Doesn't care if you're black, white,
It does not care.
gay, straight,
Does not
rich,
care.
poor.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
But I always try to think, what in the hell went wrong? And it wasn't the perfect like situation. My parents were divorced from the time they were separated basically from the time I was born. But that was normal to me because that's how it was. I never knew anything different. So it never affected me. That's all I'd ever known. So that was not like a big thing for me.
Right.
But I do, in hindsight, I just remember now looking back, I'm like, wow, I was so afraid. Even as a little girl, I was just so afraid. And for me, I think that's really where my addiction started. It was like, I just had so much fear. I remember listening outside my mom's door, like her and her boyfriend or her partner fighting about money. And I was so worried, or I just was always so exposed to so much fear at such a young age. And I remember being really scared just as a kid. And
That's crazy. Me too.
yeah, I don't know. And I don't blame my parents for that. Like they were having money issues, whatever we grew up for, it is what it is. But it definitely impacted me in a way. And I think with having a pastor father, there was also a lot of fear that was installed in me through the church. Fear of what was
good.
to be. And this was like a really intense type of Christianity. My dad's was a Pentecostal pastor. So if anybody knows what that is, it's pretty extreme. I was a really loved child, and I had two loving parents who were honestly doing the best that they could. And so I don't have that chip on my shoulder to blame, unfortunately, even though at one point I tried to use that as the excuse. But I started using, I think the first time I started using was by the time I was 12. And what that looked like for me is I had a friend, and she had introduced me to some really intense cough medicine at that time. And I just remember taking crazy amounts of this cough medicine and getting extremely fucked up. And this went on for a little while until it very quickly turned into the harder stuff. My sister introduced me. I hate saying that, but it's the truth. Sorry, sis, you're never going to hear this. And we have a great relationship now, you know what I mean? But I guess when I was little, I was her younger sister. So I guess I was a tattletale when I was little.
Oh, no.
So her whole thing was that she gave me drugs. I wouldn't tell on her. So by the time I was 13, I had my first experiences with weed, alcohol. Then it was like MDA, mushrooms, and very quickly meth.
Wow.
You're one of the few people that calls it MDA instead of ecstasy or Molly.
Yeah. Because the stuff that we were doing back then
Was MDA. Me too.
Because I was a kid. Like it was probably around the same time that some of the adults were actually getting MDMA or MDA. But like I was so young, I was actually getting these really hard drugs as just a kid. The weird thing about it is I thought I was an adult. I just thought I was an adult person when I was that age. And I always joke, you never want to see what a meth come down looks like for a prepubescent teenager. Like, it is gnarly. Like, it was like something that was just like on a whole nother level. And so it wasn't exactly.
I bet you didn't even understand.
I didn't understand. I just, and a lot of the, and I just remember feeling all these different feelings. And I think I just couldn't sit in myself, even at that young age. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't sit inside of being me. And at first, I really disliked the feeling of all the different things that I was doing, but I was willing to do anything and everything to feel different than I was feeling when I wasn't using. And that really spiraled really quickly. And I feel terrible now because back then I blamed my mom. Like, I was like, I had such a big chip on my shoulder that she was trying to control me at that age. Because by the time I was 14, my parents were like, I don't even think I was 14 yet. By the time I was 13, my parents were like, we're going to send you to a boarding school. They had signed all the papers. And the night before I left, I ran away. And because I was so upset and it made me feel like they didn't want me. But now in hindsight, I realized like they had no idea what to do. A meth addict 13-year-old.
Especially back then.
Yeah. And so in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I really put them through the ringer. And I put a lot of blame on, and I let that, they didn't want me, they didn't love me mindset fuel my addiction for a really long time.
I'm going to tell you, I had that resentment until 2 years ago. In IOP.
Yeah.
My parents dropped me off at 6 months to 11 at the nannies. They were divorced too at 9 months. And I had that chip on my shoulder that I probably wouldn't have been molested if I was in your custody. So good for you getting this at a younger age.
Yeah.
I always say I'm a slow learner.
Yeah. And what that looked like for me was by the time she would try to ground me, they were trying to do the right thing, but I was so unruly. If you grounded me, I would wait till you fell asleep and I'd go out the window.
I was exactly the same
I
way.
was like, you're not going to fucking control me. Yeah. You have nothing. You have nothing except for words. Yeah. I am going to do what I physically want to do because my addiction was fueling me at that age.
Yeah.
It was running the show.
Damn, I was a good kid.
I thank my parents actually in height. From now, I can look back and see that by grounding me so much got me to be such a crafty person.
Oh my gosh.
And so now I'm really great troubleshooter because I can look at a situation and go, here's how you might work around. Because that's what I did all the time trying to get out of being grounded.
Yes.
Yeah. And the cough syrup thing also, that resonates with me because I remember there was this guy in our school, I won't say his name because I don't know where he's at today, but he was like a pusher of the cough syrup. Yeah. It was like something with codeine, I think in it.
This was dextromethorphan, and it is actually a very nasty drug. Yeah, it was horrible. I can't even believe I was that young getting that fucked up.
I know, right?
I was like, my gosh. But
again, late bloomer.
Yeah.
But for me,
it takes me longer
You'll catch
to
up.
do
We'll get to your
everything.
part.
No, I'm just saying. Wow.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a part of. And so the peer pressure worked great with me because I just wanted to be a part of. And so I would do whatever they were doing. And we, for a period of my growing up, we lived with my cousins. And one cousin in particular was a very bad influence. Yeah. And so I was gravitated because I thought he was so cool. And anything he did, I wanted to do. So all of that was,
Yeah. But to carry on, it was like, so basically by the time I was 13, I had 36 runaway reports on me.
Oh my gosh.
So I would not stay. So like I said, they were going to send me to boarding school because that was like their big plan. But that's when I was like, this time I'm going to run away for real. And I took off to Washington first. And then from Washington, I went back down to Oregon, back up to Washington, to Idaho, ended up in the middle of the desert in California when I was 16 with a guy who was 18. And at that point, he was beating the shit out of me so bad. I was like, can't stay here. I'm going to hurt this guy to save myself. And I ended up reaching out to my sister, the same sister, when she had gotten her shit together. And she had came down to California to get me. And by that time, it had been 3 years. So I was 16. I was gone for 3 years. And
did you have any contact with your?
I didn't. No, I didn't. And that's not unheard of for me. That trend continued for me.
Mm.
I came back up to Oregon with a full-blown meth addiction at that point. And it was, God, it was just so bad. And then the next 2 years, as I was in Oregon, it just kept getting worse and worse. The people I was associating with, all adults, of course. And at that time, I'm 16. I'm a full-blown meth addict, and I'm in the dope game with all adults.
Mm.
And the things that had happened when I was hopping around in all those states and whatnot, nothing, I always say nothing good happens to a homeless meth addict 13-year-old.
Oh.
Nothing good.
Yeah.
And like I said,
You
I
get
thought
an education of a different kind.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was literally, I dropped out of school at that age. And I look back and I'm like, there's parts that I'm like, God, that's so fucked. I'm walking with so much trauma from that.
Can I tell you, I really understand, even though I
Yeah.
say I'm a late bloomer.
Yeah.
I was so dumb that I really thought the escort service,
Yeah.
someone was taking me to the fucking ballet.
Yeah.
I'm serious. And I
Yeah.
went from 0 to 20 quickly, but I didn't know no better. And people took advantage of me.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine at 13. And I'm business smart, but I'm even more street smart.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The exposure in hindsight, like I said, I thought I was an adult. And so everything I did was with adults pretty much.
Yeah.
And so what that looked like was adult people taking advantage of me. Yeah, it was really tough. And then whenever I had a boyfriend, he was beating the shit out of me. So it was like my safe person is abusive and the other people are abusive. So no matter how you look at it, like I was just being abused. And I remember coming back up to Oregon, my disease spiraling out of control. And at that point, I had stepped into it and thought it was scary when I was a kid because I was like just out there with like nowhere to go. I literally just had to do anything and everything just to find a way to get inside. That's so crazy to me because I had these parents. It's like, why was there such a block? I just couldn't give up the disease to turn myself back to my family. But when I got back up to Oregon, it spiraled out of control. And by the time I was 18, I was set up in an arranged by, and I was they set me up within 1,000 feet of a school zone. They obviously were smarter than me. And somebody, I was, at that point, I had been like fully, like I started selling dope and shit. And by that time I had been like just fully involved in that criminal part of it. And somebody I was dealing with got caught stealing at a Fred Meyer and said, I know a girl we can set up an arranged buy. And they're like, you're not going to get anything off. And then he was like, I'll do it anyways. Did it anyways.
Oh.
And so by the time I was 18, I remember it was just crazy because they set me up at a transit center. And my last memory of that night was they had 15 AR-15s pointed at me. And I'm at a fucking transit center. I'm 18. I have no weapons on me. That in itself was traumatizing. And I went to jail for the first time for that. And I became a felon immediately when I was 18. And that in itself has carried a lot of, because it was so hard to find housing. It was so hard to find a job that was like worth anything paying. But I was supposed to be getting clean at that point. I was still resisting quite a bit. And I ended up doing some time out into probation or whatever. They let me off. It was my first charge. They let me off. And then within, I think, a week and a half, I was arrested for beating the shit out of a guy who was beating the shit out of me. And then I went to jail for it.
Oh.
And so I caught some new charges and ended back up and again. And they were so close together this time. They're like, you're staying and this is going to get more serious or whatever. And I got let out eventually on a suspended sentence. It got pled down from a measure 11 because at first I wouldn't admit that we were in a domestic relationship, and it got pled down into a domestic violence case where I was the batterer.
Which is better. The other is 5 years. So
Yeah, it is better.
5 years, no
Yes.
good time.
Yes.
On an aside.
So I have that on my record. I'm like, oh, that looks gnarly. You're right. So it's no joke. Women who are battered enough, or people who are battered enough, they will eventually defend themselves and become the batterer. Like, it's just
I will
part
let
of
you
it
know you
was.
will not put your hands on me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like
That's how it got to. After that much
Mhm.
abuse for the 5 years leading up to that, like at that point, anytime somebody, at that point, it was like, I'm literally in survival mode, fighting for my life. That's just all I knew at that
I
point.
have a
Right.
scar above my eye
Yeah.
from a gun in the face.
Yeah.
And no one has ever put their hands on me
Yeah.
since. Yeah. no,
Yeah.
it's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was when they were like, okay, we're fucking serious. You're going to get clean and do this program, or you're going to prison, like for real. And I think it was at that point, I think it was a 36-month suspended sentence or something around there. I think it may have been like a 4-year suspended sentence.
It's a lot of suspended sentence
Yeah. Especially for an 18-year-old, that was a lot.
for anyone, but so young. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it scared me. It scared
I'm
me.
glad.
Yeah. It scared me enough that I was like, I'm gonna get clean because I wasn't ready to go to prison yet. And I knew
Amen.
that's where I was headed. And that worked. That worked for me. But I white knuckled it. I never developed a program. Anytime I'd go into a program, even any type of meeting I'd go into, I remember one time I shared at a meeting what a bunch of bullshit, whiny ass babies I thought they were. I was like I was not drinking the Kool-Aid. Like
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
want anything to do with that type of recovery. And I did my little diversion program or whatever, and I did a year of batterers intervention program. That was a really long fucking program.
Yeah.
And so I completed that stuff, and then I finished out my probation, which left me at age 22. But during that time that I was clean, by the time I was 18, or by the time I was 20, I was already stripping. So I was like, I'm not making enough money in this life, like as this sober person working at my job. So I had this brilliant idea
And paying taxes suck.
that I was going to become a stripper. So I started dancing, and I danced all over Portland. And when I got off probation, of course, it was a drink that led me back.
Mm.
It's always the drink. I thought I could have a glass of like a champagne on a New Year's or something. And that glass of champagne turned into, I think, first painkillers, then more alcohol, cocaine, then I believe it turned into heroin and then straight into meth.
It goes with the lifestyle. It's hand in hand.
But I was like, I'm not going back to meth. I'll do anything except for the meth.
and the fast money. The fast money
And I
is
was right back
addicting
there.
as well.
Yeah.
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 Work going to a job
Yeah.
for 22.
Yeah.
When you make hundreds.
That's why.
Is hard.
And back then that was in like between the years of 8 and 2012. So it was right when the economy had
Yeah.
So like gas was like $5. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was like $5 a fucking gallon. And I just remember it was so hard to find like good jobs during that time, even for a felon. Like that was pretty shitty. But I didn't have a lot of skills at that point. And so I thought that sometimes I would leave the strip club with like $800 or $1,000. And so I couldn't pass it up. And that greed definitely took me back out. During that time that I was clean and dancing, I still was with an abuser.
Oh, really?
Like everything, I was still driving people around to parties and they were getting drunk, and everything about my life was the same. I just wasn't using.
Right.
You
So-
had sobriety, but not recovery.
Exactly. So the second I turned 22 and I started, as soon as that 4 years of that probation was up, I instantly went back to using. And like I said, it spiraled out very quickly. I went back to my drug of choice, and now I have a heroin addiction on top of it. So that, and I'll tell you, like, that addiction took me to some places that, like, even my meth addiction didn't take me to. So when it first started, like when I was still dancing and stuff, I thought I was so like, this is so luxurious. I'm on top of the world. I have all this money. I really didn't have that much money, but in my mind, I had all this money. I had my own apartment that was left over from that period of me being sober. And like within 3 months, some guy had busted the window in and came in and like DV'd me and Then the cops got involved and I got thrown out of that apartment. I lost it. So now I'm homeless very quickly.
Wow. Yeah.
So I became homeless very quickly again. And then I had spent the next 5 years basically homeless with the meth and heroin addiction. And it was bad before, but this was worse. The second time around was a lot worse.
I thought I was better because I stayed in fancy hotels.
And I made it into fancy hotels.
Yeah, I thought for some reason it wasn't until Jack was on our show, Jack Taylor, and told me, was your name on the lease? And I said no. And he said, you were a homeless hoe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought I was like elegant. I thought I was an elegant escort.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was in all kinds of fancy hotels. And the dancing got to the point where it's like, you're supposed to be here at 8. And then it was like, okay, you're not able to be here at 8. So can you get here at 10? And then the club closes at 2:30. It was to the point where I couldn't even get my shit together enough to get into the club by midnight. So the dancing fell to the wayside because I was so wrapped up in trying to get drugs, get well, get better, get dressed. And you know how it is when you're tweaking. You're like chasing your own fucking tail. And I'm homeless trying to do this out of like hotel rooms and whatever I was doing. And the dancing, with that type of addiction, the way I was using, it was really hard to maintain even that. And that's like the easiest job you could ever have, like the least responsibility. And the other girls there hated me. They'd be like, the drug addicts are in there doing their drugs again, telling on me. They hated it because I was willing to do grimier shit for less money and taking their regulars and whatever. But they absolutely hated me. I got ran out of most of the clubs and until I was running myself out because basically I couldn't even make it in there on time to even get any work done. And that's where things quickly led to posting myself on Backpage. I'm not sure if you know what that is. That's where the escorts of the mid 2000s or whatever were on.
I had ads in the yellow pages.
Yeah. the good old days.
Straight
What
out.
are the yellow pages? No, I'm just kidding.
And you had to post your ads a year in advance. And then I was smart enough that if you're a customer going down the ads, so I had absolutely the best because the A's came before. Oh yeah. Insane.
Yeah. And meanwhile, during all of this time, I'd always have an abusive boyfriend on the side, taking my money and beating me up and abusing me and doing whatever. And just kept getting worse and worse. It got to the point where at one point when you were posting on those sites and stuff, I was like trying to charge this price and do it like the legit way because I was a stripper and I was like better than those other girls who were doing it for $80 or whatever. But there was always somebody who was willing to do it cheaper. And so we were getting beat out by the cheaper girls. And so then I had this brilliant idea that I'm going to start robbing these guys. So I couldn't even keep my shit together enough to do the job of that. But just everything I did just always turned to crime.
I'm going to tell you, I was a good businesswoman.
Yeah, I was just a monster. I was like, and I was surrounded by people who were all doing crime. So of course my mentality just went always right back to that all the time.
Growing up too with the abuse and everything.
Yeah.
It becomes a norm. So this is just the norm.
Yeah.
In criminal, they say they really believe that criminality is addiction as well.
Yeah. And during all this time, my disease just kept getting worse and worse. And it eventually got to the point and I used to think, like I said, I thought it was so luxurious. I thought that I was like so empowered because people wanted me and whatever, and I could charge but the reality was I was selling myself short always. And at the end of it, I was only able to maintain some of that shit a couple of years. But one of my low points was I just remember I was living in a crawl space that was higher than a crawl space, but dirt floors underneath a building, not having a single restroom, not a shower, nothing, dope sick in there all day and night, nowhere to go, burnt all my bridges. And that was that's where I ended up with the abusive person in that space. Abandoned houses and stealing cars to be able to steal other cars or steal from other cars and get away, and then having to use those same cars to sleep in and hoping that the cops aren't going to stop me in this sleeping in a stolen car because I wasn't willing to put a tent out. But it wasn't at that point, not enough people were willing to help me get inside of a hotel. I was trying to put myself out there as much as I could, but I couldn't even get inside to get a fucking shower. My whole life at that point had turned into I need to get a bag so that I can try to get a customer, so I can try to do the deal, so I can get into a hotel, so that I can take a shower, so I could do it again, so I could get it back again. And that was my whole life. It was just that revolving circle of trying to do that. And that's a really small way to live.
Yeah.
That was a really small way to live.
If you can even call it living, really, at that point.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
Yeah. And in the in-betweens, I was literally living in a crawl space or in a stolen car or trying to let somebody do some degrading shit to me to even get inside of their hotel room or get a bag or whatever it was. But at the end of it, the reality is I was being used up and my spirit was really broken. And the fucked up part about it all is I fucking loved that lifestyle. I loved it. I loved every fucking minute of it. And I had no idea that I wanted to get clean.
Wow.
No idea, because it had just been so long, and maybe because it started so young. Like
you were used to it. It was the norm.
I was so connected to the dope game. It was like, that was my whole life. The hustle, all of it, the excitement, the stealing of the cars, the trades, the everything. It was like that for me, that was one of the hardest parts to shake.
Wow.
But all things come to an end. I got caught up in a crime spree, I guess is what you could call it. I was looking at 106 months and I got another suspended sentence.
Shut the fuck up.
Yep.
Not all of us are that lucky.
Yeah. It had been another 10 years. And so they gave me another suspended sentence. And this time I had tried for like the first 18 months and I couldn't get my shit together. I ended up in an apartment that I ended up getting raided, and I go into the court. I go back to jail, and my suspended sentence is now being revoked because I fucked it up essentially. And so I'm like, this is the big moment. Here I go. I'm going to prison. And at that point, I was so fucking burnt from it. I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. I don't even care. Just send me to prison already. Let's just fucking do it. I was like, I had just accepted it.
Yeah.
And I walked into... I went back to jail. I'd been sitting in there. I walked into the courtroom. My PO, the DA, my public defender, who was on my original case that I flunked out of, picked the case back up because he saw my name come across and said, I'm going to take that one. He was then the manager of all the other defenders, took it on himself, came back into the courtroom. The judge, who is the Multnomah County Stark Court judge, he just so happened to be the judge who was in there that day. And I come into court that day. And to me, these people are the fucking enemy.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're a snake, you're a cop. To me, I was like, fuck these people. These are the enemy my whole life. And that's how my mentality was. If you're with the courts, if you're this, you're a square, all of them were just cops in my mind. And I get in there and every last one of them, and I was ready to go, was like, I think she can do it. And then the other one was like, she did it for a few months. She kept messing up, but I think she can do it. That's my PO said, even though I had been lying to her, all kinds of shit. The public defender was like, I think she can do it. We want to give her a chance. And then the judge was like, I want to see her in Stark Court. I want to see her in the Stark Court in Multnomah County. He goes, I want everybody to clear their days up. And by the end of the day today, we're coming back and we're having a trial. And we're getting her released today. And I was like, what in the fuck is going on in here?
Talk about a higher power.
Yeah.
So all these people who I thought were the enemy, then all were saying all these things about me that they thought I could do it. I didn't even think I could fucking do it. I was done. I was like, I can't fucking do it. You guys just battery ran to my fucking door. You obviously can't do it. And they got me out that day. They had a little court session. They figured out what they were going to do with me. They got me out that day. And of course, I immediately went back to using. And I started my drug court program. And the rule in drug court was just don't lie and just show up no matter what. Because the things that they, so even if I used, show up. Even if I did this, show up. Yeah. And come and be honest. If you're dirty, come and be honest. So I started using and I was going, but I was doing what they were saying because I was like, I'm fucking tired of going to jail. Let's just fucking do this. Because if I ran, I would go to jail and I would go to prison.
Right.
So they added some time onto that suspended sentence and threw me into this other program, drug court. And that's the program that actually worked for me. because it gave me the space to be honest. And they were like, what do you need to do this? You know what I mean? Why don't you come up with a plan? What's your plan?
Right.
And I was like, I want to get on medical assisted therapy. So they put me on Suboxone, and they gave me first a room at the Golden West and then a room at the Estates, where I lived for a year and a half. And I'll tell you what, that year and a half was the most miserable year of my life. I was the saddest I've ever been in my whole life because I wasn't working a program. And that was my truest bottom, because being sober for me without working a program was, I was better off using. Like, I was so spiritually low because the drugs were my medicine to cope.
Yes.
And I didn't have any medicine to cope anymore. And I'm just left in this room for a year and a half at the Estates. And I was so miserable. But I was graduating that program. They were kicking me off the Suboxone. And I remember I called up the only lady who I really knew in the program. And I had asked her for something unrelated. And she goes, do you have a sponsor? And I was like, no. And she's like, I'm your sponsor. And I was like, okay. She's like, call me for 30 days, get a flat book, and we're going to start working. I didn't do that. I didn't call her for 30 days. But what I did do is I went and got the flat book. And I worked that first step, and I surrendered. And my life has completely changed.
Thank God for that lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what part?
She's still my sponsor.
I love that. You
Yeah,
know what
she's still
I
my
really
sponsor.
relate to? When you said the year and a half you were sober.
Yeah.
And you were the most miserable and sad.
Mm-hmm.
I felt the exact same way. 25 years sober, right?
Yeah.
And it's the only year I felt like I didn't really have recovery
Yeah.
because I'm working. Peter and I have
Yeah.
talked about this. I'm working 65, 70 hours a week. My success is so important. I'm at a new company after being with a company 20 years.
Yeah.
And I was physically, mentally, my spiritual soul was gone, and I got sick. My eardrum exploded, and it was the worst year for me. It was, I ended up in IOP.
Yeah.
Sober at 25 years and had a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Just exhausted. And it was the worst year in the program for me.
Yeah.
And I know I was sober,
Yeah.
but I didn't have recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, having a program, like you said, having the program is so important.
Yeah.
So different
Yeah.
than just being sober.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the spiritual part, you get the fellowship, you get the friendships.
And you brought back to, I just had a kind of a moment when you were speaking about when I was getting ready to give up. For me, it was alcohol.
Yeah.
But I was on that fence, and I was so afraid of what I would go through, or what being off it, to not having anything to take that away, because that took it away from me. That's what quelled all those fears and feelings. And,
Yeah.
and that fear of not using was so intense.
Yeah.
It had such a grip on me. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And in a way, seeing that fear and realize, looking at myself and thinking, is for me not to have is so fearful. Wow, there's something going on there, because I couldn't get it from all the trouble I'd been in, right? And all the shit that I've been through. But that moment was like, wow, that this is an issue. That there is something to this. And I also see from your story that going into it so young and it becoming a norm for you, and almost like that was your life. That was what got you, because that's all you knew.
I'm not gonna lie, it was exciting.
Yeah.
It was an exciting life.
Yeah.
When some of the literature says we had to have something different, we thought we'd found it in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was, for me, it was different. You know what I mean? I wasn't like you guys. My life was different, exciting, adventurous,
special.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the thing is, part of why I was so miserable that year is I had abandoned all of my family at that point and been estranged to them for all those years. I had no contact with my family while I was using, pretty much. And I had not a single friend because everybody I knew was in the dope game. And I wasn't doing that right then. And if I was around them, that first year was tough. I was still running around with my drug dealer boyfriend. I was selling drugs. Had my hands in the middle of crimes. The only thing that was different was I was in star court and I wasn't using it. It was the same situation as before. But when this woman said to pick up that flat book, and I knew some changes were coming, they were getting ready to kick me out of the Estates. And I had a realization that my drug dealer boyfriend didn't love me. He was in love with the drugs. And there was a part of me that was just like, I didn't want to go back to what I was doing before because my life, I realized it was a little easier. I had a shower every day. I had somewhere to sleep every day. And I was working my shitty ass waitressing job at Sherry's where I was making my own money and I wasn't having to do some fucked up shit to get the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I realized how degraded and how I actually disliked doing that so much, which I thought was, I had so much power over these people because I could sell it and blah, 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 or whatever the fuck story I told myself. But the reality is like at that point, I was already burnt out from doing it.
I'm going to tell you, and it's a lonely place.
Yeah.
I when I had the most money in my whole entire life, $250,000 in the bank, I trusted no one. I wouldn't date anyone. I didn't want you to date me for money. I come to my house.
I mean, the dope game's like that. You trust nobody.
Yes,
Anyways,
you know.
and
like you couldn't come to my house.
Yeah.
You couldn't. That way, you couldn't be an informant.
Yeah,
that
was my I was. For me, and that's one of the things is I couldn't buy into the program because my mentality then was if you were in the program, you were there because you got kicked out of the dope game because you were a rat. And so I wanted nothing to do with that world. That was my mentality when I got here.
Yeah, I took the blame, so I knew.
But that's what the streets had done to me.
Yeah.
You know
No,
what
I
I
hear
mean?
you.
I had just been so hardened by it all. And after I worked the steps, I started working the steps. And then I remember they were telling me at the estates that I had to leave. And I told the guy, I said, my housing coordinator or whatever, I was like, yeah, I'll leave when you get me free housing, women's housing in the best part of town. And I don't even remember what the other thing was, but that's what I told him, right? I wanted free, I wanted best part of town, and I wanted it to be women's. And I knew he wasn't going to find that. He came back to me 2 days later. He goes, I have an interview for you at a house. And he said, this is a personal connection of mine. It's not through CCC. And I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? So I go to this interview and I meet with my current boss of Arbor House Portland, which is the organization that I am with. And I remember I went to the interview and halfway through the interview, I was like, what a fucking bore. Like, I didn't realize I was interviewing to be the house manager. I thought I was interviewing for just like a bed there. And then I was like, who do these people think I am? And in my mind, I was like, I don't want to be in charge of UA and then kicking people out. Like, that would be a snitch thing. And that was my mentality. And I remember halfway through the interview, he was telling me about all the rules. And then he was getting really bored and I wanted to go work out. So I was like, you know what? This is great. Do you mind if I leave and go work out now? That's what I said. And he was like, okay, thanks for coming by, blah, 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 whatever. A week later, he calls me and he's like, you know what? You're the best candidate. And I was like, are you kidding me? I am the best candidate that you have to run this house.
A higher power,
You know,
again. Okay.
And the rent was free. It was women's, and it was in the nicest part of town I've ever lived in. I was like, that is so ironic.
Which is awesome because you don't run into your old constituents.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that neighborhood I was patrolling to steal from, not live in.
Yeah, I moved back.
Yeah.
I violated my parole to move back out to Beaverton without permission to hopefully not run into anyone because being around anyone was a violation of my parole. Like, how can you have it both ways?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get it.
Yeah. And so then he asked me to write this thing about, because then he pulled my rap sheet up and he was like, oh, this is serious. Can you write a little thing about, and I still wasn't committed. I wasn't going to take it. And so then I wrote a little thing that was like, I don't have any good reasons for why I did this. I did this because I'm a drug addict and I literally would have done anything for my drugs. I'm not going to make any excuses for it. I sent it to him and he was like, perfect. And then he I can't even believe it was like a week later, he wanted to move me in. I almost passed up on it. But I remember my sponsor and the people in my life at that time, the few people who were coming back into my life was like, why don't you just try something different? Yeah. And so I was already on a housing list to get into a low income housing on 122nd and Burnside or something crazy like that. You know what I mean? And that was where I was leaning on going. And so I was like, I will fill the void for a couple months. I'll go here. And then I will go to this Burnside place where I have my own place so I can move my drug dealer boyfriend in and I can blah, 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 blah. And I was going to do the same fucking shit.
Right.
And so I ended up there. And I remember I almost left because by the time I got, and by this, when I moved in there, I was like around step 3. And I remember after I'd been there for a couple of months, I got to step 6 and then he had a talk with me and he was like, some of the girls are saying I was a little too rough around the fucking edges for them. And now it's toned down a lot now. You know what I mean? So people are like, what? What? Like, you're so loving and nice and warm and welcoming. But I guess I was a little too rough around the edges for them.
Point blank.
Yeah. And I told him, I said, I'm going to give you a month's notice. My apartment's open. I'm moving in a month. I'm not going to be fucking fake. And that was my mentality. I was like, I'm out of here. These bitches can't handle it. Fuck this place. You know what I mean?
You sound so much like me.
So then I did my step 6, and it talked about character defects. And I worked with my sponsor on that abrasiveness part. And something in me, by using the step 7 to learn how to have some spiritual principles that replace that defect. And I started working on those parts of me. And I don't know why I did it, but I let that apartment go. When my name got called for it, I let it go. I don't know why I did it. And I stayed, and I've been there I think it's been 7.5 years now. Or no, 6.5 years. 6.5 years. We're coming up on our 7th year.
Wow.
And
God is so good.
yeah, Arbor House, me working the steps, it gave me a spiritual awakening. I've been changed literally to my core.
I've seen you change in our meeting alone.
You know? Yeah,
I've seen you go from not open to open.
Yeah.
I've seen you go from being a player to a team player.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but I've seen it. You used to sit by yourself. You have a crew.
Yeah, I had to test the waters there before I brought my clan.
I have a crew too. They're just 70 plus.
And so for me, it was like, when I started working at that house, I didn't have a single friend.
Same.
And it's so interesting because in hindsight, I realize now, like, my higher power put me in that house. And yes, the house probably needs me, but I needed that house so much because, like I said before, I had to have something different. And I thought I found it in drugs. But the reality of it is my higher power knew that what I needed was something different that I needed was to be of maximum service and to help other people. And that was a powerful enough purpose for that. I wouldn't want to go back out.
And you don't keep it unless you give it away.
Exactly. And I didn't understand that in the beginning.
Neither did I.
One of my things was like, I didn't want to be the type of person who was leading that house, telling you to go to X and Y, Z, go to this many meetings, do this much step work, do this, do that, do the other. I didn't want to tell you to do all those things and not do it myself. So I started doing all the things that they were doing, even though it wasn't my requirement. But I didn't feel right making them do it without me doing it. And because I was upholding those standards for them and I was doing it myself, my program blossomed.
That's what I do with my sponsor.
Yeah, I felt.
And it's crazy about, you said step 6.
Yeah.
I have a video screen chat with them every Tuesday at 10, which is today's Tuesday. And we're on step 6. And I was talking about recovery cap. Instead of saying you shouldn't hang out with so-and-so, right? Because that's not my place. And they know who they shouldn't hang out with. But I said, do you know what recovery capital is? When you hang out with this sober person, that helps your foundation and it's recovery capital. When you have a job, you have more recovery capital. When you have a sober place to stay, it's recovery capital. But if you're hanging out with somebody using, that takes away from your recovery capital.
Right.
And so I was like, so every situation you look at, is it adding to your recovery capital or is it taking away?
Yeah.
I said, in recovery capital, I'm a fucking billionaire.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's nothing that takes away from my recovery capital. I don't let it.
Yeah.
Unless it's me.
Yeah.
Or my brain.
Your brain, I was going to say, unless it's your brain.
One of the things about responsible for Arbor House is I quickly learned that I have 8 women who are freshly in the program with their eyes on me. And they are watching what I do. You know what I mean? Because when we get here, we may not always hear people, but we watch. We watch to see what people's actions are, reactions, how they carry themselves.
Are they about their word?
Yeah. And I've learned so much from these women, and I've learned so much about myself. And I've had so much growth because it's given me the opportunity to show up in a community in a different way. And like now, like I came in with nobody or nothing, but like now the alumni alone from this house is, my crew is so freaking big. Luxury problems, right? I don't know how to schedule them all in or text them all back. It's fucking crazy.
Have to tell
That's
me.
how big the love is
I
there.
could stay with AA 60 hours a week. I have to
Yes.
tell Peter, whoa, I have to step back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now I have this big, beautiful community of women that I've been a part of their amazing journeys. And there's so much love between us and such a wonderful bond.
In a
It's
lot of
just-
ways, it seems like it's fulfilling what
Yes.
you and your drug time was
Yes.
looking for, that
Yes.
feeling,
Yes.
but you're getting it from this positive.
Yes. It's been such a beautiful experience. And I can't say enough about this program. Like, yes, I love Arbor House, but like I wouldn't have been able to do it without working the steps and having that spiritual awakening, because I was too self-centered, too self-obsessed. I wouldn't have lasted in a sober living community for that long. It's not an easy gig all the time.
But
Well,
I think in your position, right?
Yeah.
You get things that drug money and stripping
Oh my
can't buy.
gosh. Yes.
You can't buy a work ethic.
Mm-mm.
You can't
No.
buy your word.
No.
You can't buy honesty.
No.
You can't buy trust. These things are irreplaceable,
Yeah.
so sought out, not
Yeah.
always given,
Yeah.
and you cannot pay for them.
And today, I will say today, like, I'm a daughter again. I'm a sister again. I'm a friend. I'm a sponsor. And those are just like some of the things. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a CRM. I'm going for my CDAC right now. Like
That's awesome.
like
I
the
love that.
things that I have, the blessings that I have coming to me are like so many. My life is completely changed. I never thought I would be a woman in Portland running a small business. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm running my own small personal training business. Like I never thought that. When I was 17, I had fully like sunk into the fact that I was going to be a meth addict for the rest of my life. I had accepted that. But like I said, like today I'm a daughter, like I have the relationships with my family back. And right now that's like an area that I'm really leaning into. And that's, to be honest, that's been the hardest part to get back.
Mm-hmm.
You were gone a long time, babe.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
connection there, because I feel more connected to like somebody in recovery, my sponsor, the women at my house. I feel more connected, more like engaged with those people than I have my own family. And so that has been the focus. I'm really trying to have that living amends piece.
And I understand. I'm extremely close with my daughter, but I've been sober almost her whole
Yeah.
life. But like my sponsor
Yeah.
I'm closer to my sponsor than almost anyone but my daughter. And Peter and I Peter's my brother from another mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have conversations that I don't have with any other man.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
We really do. And it's crazy, and they come and they flow easy. And my trust is so much easier. I would like to tell you I trust the world. I don't.
Right.
I would like to tell you relationships are easy. It depends. I can
Right.
speak to
Yeah.
15,000 people in a thing. It's not a problem
Yeah.
for me. But do I trust you?
Right.
Who I choose to hang out with is very personal to me.
Right. Yeah. It's just, to me at this point, there's no greater purpose than being a part of somebody else's spiritual awakening and the transformation that they experience when they come to recovery and work a program and are surrounded by the love, the mercy, and the grace that this program has to offer. And it has impacted me in a way that like, it's just mind blowing. And it's just so interesting because even though the house is so close, it's so close, it feels so weird to have two different lives because I'm living this different life now that is so wildly different. Even my feelings, the person I am on the inside to the core of me.
I've been out of prison 30 years. Okay. And it's still, you know what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
And who you are when you use is not who you are when you're sober and working a
Right.
program.
Right.
I feel like they're two entirely different people. In my personal life, I've never been promiscuous in my entire personal life. You know what I'm saying? Yet the escort service, right?
Right.
In my personal life, I'm not a liar. I was a scammer in the escort service it's incredible. And I think you're a strong individual, like you say, you were self-centered, but I think that strong individual is what makes you of so much purpose and are going to continue to be of purpose. I think it's crazy. I think sometimes when you find success and you make it through, like, there's no stopping us.
God, I just want to share it I just want to share it. I'm just like, and I get it because I was a hard sell. Like I said, I would not drink the Kool-Aid, but now, and somebody once told me, the bigger the disbelief, the bigger the spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And like my disbelief was really big. And so when it happened, it changed my world. And at this point, it's like, I'm willing to go to any lengths of doing the internal work to continue to be able to continue on this journey. And that means a lot of hard digging sometimes.
For me, that I want to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And I feel like I had a reset when I went to
Yeah.
IOP.
Yeah. When I was listening to your thing, I was like, oh, wow, that's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And between that, the podcast, and I wouldn't have gone into, I did with GTD, but I going in and going to another chance and taking a meeting in there, it humbles me.
I was there today.
Yeah.
Watching your graduation.
Yeah, it humbles me. And everybody does deserve another chance.
Yeah.
Because it might be the one chance that they get it. Like, fucking A.
And I love also in your story where you talk about that group, that team, that you were like, these are snitches. These are, what are these?
Like
they're the people that saw whatever it was.
Yeah.
They knew there was something there.
Yeah.
That you didn't even know yourself.
I'm always jealous of that stuff. People, I didn't have that.
People like that need to be praised, and we need more of them.
Because there's not a lot of people in the court system who can see through the fact that I was a low-level fucking drug addict doing all kinds of crime, associated with all kinds of people who like don't usually get chances.
Yeah.
And for them, and when I look back at my whole story now, and sometimes I'm like, why didn't we hear parallel all these things happening to me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, from what I went through, the fact that I made it through all of that, and I am right where I am right now, that I've been given the chance at a second life.
Yeah.
The freedom for me.
And you also having what you went through makes you credible to those people that you're now leading the way for or helping them their recovery.
It's such an honor to be a part of so many people.
Because I always ask that too. Why did I have to go through this shit? Why did I have to go through this?
Well, you've had an education. You've had an education that money cannot buy. And I will tell you, sitting in treatment back in the day and in your textbook treatment person, please. You don't, and to be honest with you, the one thing I love about John from Another Chance, he has 45 felonies. I respect you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And he had that team, that judge that said, you know what?
Yeah.
That
you deserve the
There's
chance.
more.
There's more. So
more.
weird how people can see that.
I think basically they want it, not
those squares.
Not everyone will make it, but one that does is it's just like coming in our room, right?
Yes.
I see so many come in and go out. I see so many come in, come back and go out again.
Yeah.
And then I see a Colette where I sit there and I count every night with her, because that's when I was in IOP. And I sit there and the one night she's not there, I'm calling her, where are you? You know what I'm saying? I'm not her sponsor. I'm not nothing. I just want to know where you are.
That's right.
And she was at something. And I'm counting her days with her. And she still puts her days on the screen. And
so, I seen that. Yeah.
That was like almost the time I was in IOP.
So much.
That's why she's like my token of what I'm saying. And just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
If someone listening is interested in your Arbor House, you said.
So we're Arbor House of Portland. Yeah, we're online. They can check us out there.
We'll put a link.
We'll get a link on our resource
getting ready
page.
to have a pretty large fundraiser. If people are interested in looking into what that looks like and checking that out. We are a nonprofit at this point. But it's like, it's just what we're saying about like the changing of things is so many people, they make the choice to go back out. And I see a lot of that because I'm also working with a lot of newcomers. And so for me, it's like the more I can just be an example of attraction rather than promotion. I always want to be that person that they can reach back out to when they do finally get it and are finally ready.
So what's the fundraiser you're going to have?
Oh, yeah. We're planning a fundraiser that's happening February 7th, which will be an in-person fundraiser. Yeah, some exciting details. We'll send a link to, I'll keep you a link
Absolutely,
to.
and we'll share it.
That would be
And
awesome.
We
Yeah.
love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we started off as a little just my boss is Sky, and he's the director, and he started off by just buying the house and starting it up, and that's how he's morphed it into this nonprofit. The vision is eventually we want to, we apply to tons of grants and stuff, trying to be seen. It's trying to stake our name.
That's our vision.
Yeah, we want to grow it. We want to be able to house more women, expand it, get to more women.
Your vision is our vision.
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that.
No,
yeah.
we just
we
Peter
want to fill Lunch Bunch up all the way with all the women.
Can I tell you?
Yeah,
it's pretty like cool. I don't know.
Coming from its roots,
Yeah.
it's very diverse.
Oh,
It is.
Very diverse
Yeah,
now.
I was literally like the first girl.
And when I got there, I was like, is it okay that I'm like bisexual and I'm here? And then one of the members gave me a flag, like a fan that said, by the way. And I was like, I'm accepted here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it made me feel comfortable. When I was having a hard time in recovery, going through my own sexual identity, like, that's when I found Lunch Bunch. Like, I needed to be somewhere where people didn't know me, where I was anonymous, and I could still come as I am, because I wasn't quite ready to,
And I
work
think
through that in some of the meetings, women's meetings. It was
Yeah.
I
an
actually
interesting
agree
thing.
with
Like,
you.
Yeah.
I tell Peter all the time, one, I'm coming from prison. I'm coming from being in the escort service.
Yeah.
I've been in 2 relationships.
Yeah.
One with a girl, one with the boy.
Mhm.
I just call it fluid or Julie
Yeah.
or whatever the fuck I
Yeah.
want to be, because
Yeah.
that's what it will be.
Yeah.
And going to a men's gay meeting
Yeah.
was the safest fucking place for me in the
too.
whole world.
Yeah, it felt
Yeah.
so good. And I loved when I got there, I needed to be anonymous. at that
And I'd
moment.
never mixed with
and those who
the
are
meetings.
struggling one of the phrases is look for the similarities, not the differences. You know?
I see for me, I could see nothing but similarities with you guys. I was
Exactly.
like, I'm in the right place.
And that's what's so nice.
Yeah.
Whereas when I first
Yes.
started down my journey, I was like, these drugs, and they've come off the streets
Yeah.
with the hobo with the bat. My whole view was
Yeah.
just like, I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
And then you start to say, your mind starts to open up. Maybe you start to listen a little bit and you start hearing wait a minute, I can relate to
That
what
room
that
has so much time, though. And I need to be surrounded
Can
by
I
my
tell you?
predecessors. I need to be around you, Julie.
And for me, it was like that coming in. I had Scott C. in my very first meeting. He's going to be celebrating
Yeah.
50 years.
I know. I love it when that guy.
And I had Steve K.
so much wisdom
in
flowing
my
out of him. I swear.
I know,
to you.
right?
Yeah. And I had Steve K too. For me, it was easier at first to be with the guys that were solid, that didn't scare me.
Yeah.
Now I can be with the newcomer and I
Fifi.
can go to another chance.
Yeah.
But I couldn't go to another chance at first.
Yeah.
Okay. It
Yeah.
couldn't. And luckily for me, the first meeting I went to was an NA meeting, and
Yeah.
the person was high. There was a person there that was high as fuck. I saw them and I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And the next day I went to the Lunch Bunch. So the other thing is find your spot.
I was just gonna say, find your people.
Peter went
find your
to
people.
Peter went to a meeting that he wasn't comfortable at until he came to ours.
Yeah.
And there's a spot for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Arbor alone, like, that is our tribe. And we have just been expanding and growing. Like, one of us goes to a meeting, we'll treat 3 from the house and then 3 from the alum. Everywhere we go, we're
I
like,
love
we'll be here,
that.
we'll be there. You know what I mean? And
That's fantastic.
and then the people who are there, like, start mingling with the alum. They sponsor each other. It turns into this community that has been so much bigger and so much more powerful
That's how it's been for Peter and
than
I.
we ever
We go to
expected.
one gala and we've seen,
Yeah.
we've interviewed these 15
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
like now they're family because we've heard their whole
Yes.
story in an
Yeah.
intimate way.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I feel closer to them than probably a lot of people in the room because
Yeah.
I've spent this time with them, just us.
Yeah.
And,
Well, the name of the group, the evening extended family.
Yes.
And really that's in my world, being a gay man, a lot of the guys that I grew up with, their families had kicked them out. Nobody talked to them. They were estranged.
Yeah.
And so we were the family. We did the Thanksgivings together. We did the Father's Day and the holidays. And now it's like this is happening all over again, where we have my sister, my father, my dad, all of these characters that are part of my life. And I know that there was a moment not too long ago where I was having an issue and I was like, call Don.
Yeah.
And he's there with his 45 plus years of
he's
sobriety.
Sponsor, right?
He's easy to talk to.
I'm always like, you're so lucky he's sponsored.
He's the man.
He's so great.
He's very positive.
I know.
And,
I just love that about him.
And he doesn't try to boss me around because that's not easy.
But he's honest. He tells you where his weakness is too. I've heard that.
And he cries.
It's so humble. And I always I see something that somebody has. And I'm like, I want to mirror that. Like, I want to try to embody that.
And he's always, my story's not that bad. And I was like, I make up for both of us. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
We need the variety, though.
We do.
This podcast came from me celebrating Father's Day with Dawn at Peter's house.
Yes, but we do need the variety because and when I think about it, it's like, I didn't have parents that didn't love me, you know what I mean, or abuse me in the beginning, but we need to hear that's not a prerequisite of this drug.
Exactly.
And we need to hear that, your bottom may have been different, but it was still your bottom and you still have a seat here.
My daughter just graduated from Another Chance. And I'll tell you, when she was in the classroom, and let's say there were 15 for hypothetical, right? They said bad childhood. She goes, I don't have any excuses. Yeah. My mom's been there the entire time and I had a flawless childhood. Yeah. And so that isn't a prerequisite, like you said. It isn't. And I will tell you, sometimes it is stuff we haven't dealt with. And sometimes it does take time to deal with that stuff. And I think for me, it was just like you. Yeah. It was just good enough to be sober for a minute before I dealt with other stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't think I was ready to deal with all the memories. Yes. I had a memory come up this year that was pretty traumatic. I called Peter within 15 minutes of watching the news story. Yeah. And it was Peter I called. My sponsor was out of town and I didn't want to bother him. Yeah. Seriously.
Well, we're all here for each other, at the end of the day.
Yeah, the way that I see it on what you're saying is we deal with the stuff, you know what I mean? The way that I see it is if the price of admission for freedom is doing the work, and giving it to somebody else, that is a very low cost for what I'm getting in return.
And the program is free. Yeah. As much money. I didn't have a lot of money in the beginning. I couldn't put $1 in the basket every day. And now I don't like to, Peter's technological, he Venmos, right, and whatnot. I don't Venmo. So when I go in the room, I usually put in a 5 or a 10. Not because I'm rich, because I owe you for 7 night meetings. Yeah.
When I come in, I never, and then I'll get 40 and say, look at your show off. I'm like, I haven't paid in 12 months. You know?
Exactly. That's what I do.
Oh, that's okay.
Same here. Yeah. But the program, if you ain't got no money, it don't cost no money.
I wouldn't have had a single dollar if it wasn't for this program. Everything I was trading was myself at the end.
Me and Colette were talking about this just the other day. The one part I think that's missing from treatment, sometimes in some programs do it better than other, and I'm not calling out any treatment center. You have to have a foundation to go to afterwards.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If you don't have a foundation to go to afterwards, you're just going to go back to what you know and who you know and what.
Just like you did several times.
Absolutely. So did I. I went through treatment and I stayed clean. I went to prison and I stayed clean, but it wasn't until the last treatment center and the lady said, Julie, I think you really want to be clean and sober. I think you stand a chance. Yeah. Well, you're going to have to find a meeting and you're going to need to stay there, period. And luckily the next day the parole officer said, hey, you got to get some slips signed. Yeah. And I'm an overachiever. So instead of going 3 times, I went 5 times. Yeah. And it stuck for me. And I was just going to go to get off parole. But
how fortunate we are that you did stay. So
how fortunate am I?
Yeah, exactly.
We needed you.
I'm just saying, how fortunate am I? I was scared. I was scared to leave. I'm still scared to leave.
I know. And look at the work you guys are doing now, though, getting the message out.
I'm just telling you, if you're out there It's easier to stay.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
might not
100%.
think so, but it
Yes.
is so much easier to stay because I see the shit people go through, and I also see that some never come back.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just stay.
For me now, there is the possibilities at this point. Now that I'm sober and clean, I realize if I put my mind to something and I want to do it, I can do it. It's all about me, whatever I want to do. The possibilities are endless. And to have that type of opportunity after being like just stuck to such a small world,
Right.
for it to open up that big.
Addicts and alcoholics are some of the most brilliant
Yes,
people
it just
in
feels
the
so
fucking
empowering now.
Peter is so fucking smart in so
Yeah.
many ways. I'm dead serious in ways you couldn't imagine.
I know, Peter, I'm most impressed with the plant soil. I really am going to have to come back and get some tips.
I just watered them today, so no.
Oh, yeah, they're looking really extra good, but all
Looking
of
extra
them-
special.
When we get ready to get to your fundraiser, reach out and we will be more than happy to assist with that.
That sounds
Yeah,
amazing.
that'll be
We
awesome,
need
and
all the support in
It's
the
been
community.
a pleasure having you
Yes,
on.
thank you
I
so much
love
for
talking to you. I
having
wish we had
me.
more time.
No, I was
I
getting nervous
knew-
if you maybe talking to you longer. So.
I actually knew this was going to be awesome. So
Yeah.
knowing and I just knew. I'm excited about your recovery.
Thank
and I'm
you.
excited to watch the growth because I know it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I'm
You're just
excited
getting
too.
started, babe. This is Julie
you.
with the Real Recovery Podcast.
This is Peter. And
I'm Erin.
Erin,
Thanks for having me.
thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for listening. That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you, whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our site. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site, so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.